The Lord of Darkness, Part 2, Chapter 7, Faith. As the Archangel of Communication, I'd been in touch with a man named Abraham, who was designated as one of your prophets. One night in 1902 BC, I arrived with dire news and a fantastic hairdo, long blonde braids twisted ornately atop my head to form a scale model of a grand cathedral. Abraham looked the same as ever. Sandy skin, dark eyes, grizzly black hair peppered with gray, and a perpetually dirty robe. "Abraham, I come with dark tidings," I told him solemnly. "Tonight we'll test the morality of the citizens of Sodom, and if they fail, we'll destroy the Valley of Siddim." The Valley of Siddim housed the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. It was a fertile area adjacent to what is now called the Dead Sea. Natural disasters are part of every world, as they're an excellent way of periodically enforcing technological and societal progress. The valley was situated atop a geological rift, making it a perfect candidate. Not only that, but Sodom had an atrociously low ratio of good to evil. Humanity needed a demonstration of morality enforcement, and the Sodomites would be easier to save if they went through hell now than if they persisted on Earth any longer. I'd like to take this moment to make something abundantly clear. Sodom was destroyed solely because it was full of people who turned into ravenous rapists at the slightest temptation. I don't know why some of you try to twist it into an anti-homosexual message. We, God included, have no problem with any sexual proclivities except rape, which includes sex with those who are unwilling or unable to give full consent. We don't condemn you for being of a certain sexuality, race, gender, culture, or religion. We're not monsters. Gomorrah was just collateral damage. Their goodness ratio wasn't great, but wasn't smite-worthy.
"Oh, please, no," Abraham begged. "My nephew Lot lives in Sodom."
"Oh," I said. "Well, I'm sure we can make an exception for him and his family." On the rare occasions we specifically smite people, we generally keep a few witnesses alive to explain the message. Lot and his daughters had above-average scores for their place and time, so they were suitable choices.
"Praise the Lord," Abraham replied. "There must be other good people in those cities. Are you really going to kill them along with all the others?"
I scoffed. I doubt there are even 50 people in all of Sodom who aren't headed for hell.
"If you find 50 good people in Sodom, will you refrain from destroying it?"
Abraham asked. "Sure," I said. "If we find 50 good people in Sodom, we'll postpone the earthquake and give people time to evacuate."
"But what if you only find 45 good people?" Abraham wondered. "Will you doom them all because they fell short by 5?
"I guess not," I replied hesitantly.
"What if you only find 40?
He asked. I kid you not, it went on like this till we got to 10, at which point I left in frustration. It was all immaterial anyhow, because I was lying. In truth, the city was doomed if more than one Sodomite failed the test. As the Archangel of Faith, Nick was responsible for testing the Sodomites' ability to remain faithful to God's will when presented with significant temptation. He brought along Asmodeus, Archdemon of Lust, whose powers were most likely to tempt those humans. When they strolled into town, they were immediately struck by the stench of rotten food, miscellaneous garbage, and every kind of substance human bodies could eject. It didn't take any special insight to notice the suspicious glares and lustful leers targeting them. "You turned off your power, right?" Nick asked out of the corner of his mouth. "Yes, humans are just this horrible," Asmodeus hissed back. As a Ryuth, Asmodeus appears differently to everyone who sees her, taking on minor physical traits the beholder finds attractive. Their species is particularly well suited to be archdemons of lust. Despite turning off her powers, she attracted the voracious eyes of everyone they passed. To Nick, Asmodeus looked like she could be Eve's twin. They'd always gotten along, but for the last few millennia, he found it increasingly hard to look directly at her. "I'm trying not to take it personally," she whispered. "It's not your fault they're savages," Nick replied firmly, glaring at a group of gawking humans. "Not talking about them," Asmodeus told him pointedly. He forced himself to meet her eyes. "You're getting worse," she noted. Nick dropped eye contact again. "Sorry." "Don't worry, I'm not offended," Asmodeus assured him. Youths never developed the concept of judging others based on appearance, thus lacked the concept of feeling judged about it. I brought it up because I'm worried about you. I'm fine, Nick lied stiffly. Left here. Where are we going? Asmodeus asked. I promised Gabriel I'd make Lot and his kids the witnesses, he told her. Who? One of Abraham's many nephews, explained Nick. No wives? Asmodeus guessed. Skimming his notes, Nick replied, He's got a wife, Ado, but she doesn't qualify. Abusive towards her daughters, not enough points. Assuming they fail the test, Asmodeus said. They both chuckled, then frowned. We all knew Sodom would fail the test, but wanted to give them a chance to prove us wrong anyway. So, do you have trouble seeing me fully because of your perception skips? She asked. Just drop it. It's important, Archdemon Asmodeus insisted. If something goes wrong tonight and you can't see me clearly. No, Nick answered. My perception skips don't make you hard to see. Then why? Nick blurted. I'm trying so damn hard not to think about her every second of every day, and being around you makes it so much harder. I'm sorry. I know it's not your fault, and I feel like a disgusting bigot, but I'm hanging by a thread over a bottomless pit of despair, and I'm scared I'll fall if I look at you too long. Hey, Asmodeus said gently, patting his shoulder. Youths wear blindfolds while mourning for that very reason. As for the rest of it... Starving for advice, Nick nearly burst into tears after skipping over it. Does that help? Asked Archdemon Asmodeus of Lust. You're looking at me like I made it worse. Archangel Nick of Penance and Faith sighed. Might have been the best advice I never heard. This is it, by the way. Nick took a moment to regain his composure before knocking on the door. He smiled brightly at the girl who opened it. Hi there. We're messengers from God. Can we come in? The girl, Midrash, blinked a few times, then nodded fervently. She ushered them inside without a word, then hastily closed and locked the door behind them. Nick and Asmodeus were treated to all the hospitality Lot could muster, although he didn't contribute much since his wife Ado made the meal and his other daughter Agada cleaned up afterwards. After dinner, Asmodeus turned on her powers of lust. It wasn't long before men and women pounded on the door, demanding entry so they could rape the two visitors inside. Obviously, this was not the response we were hoping for. Then, Lot attempted to prove his fidelity to God by doing something truly horrific. He told the group outside, I can't let you hurt my guests that God sent, but could I interest you in my two virgin daughters instead? The mob outside broke through the door, lunging at the disappointed Celestials and frightened humans alike. Her job done, Asmodeus waved goodbye to Nick and teleported away. I've seen enough, Nick decided. He pushed the intruders out the door with a wall of air, kept them out with a force field, and temporarily blinded them for good measure. Then he asked Lot's trembling daughters, Are you okay? The girls nodded tearfully. Rounding on Lot, Nick growled, The only reason you're going to survive this is we need you to tell Abraham about it. From now on, you will treat your daughters like people. In fact, I order you to treat all humans like equals. Shortly before dawn, Nick jostled Lot awake and gestured for him to stay quiet. He whispered, Take Midrash and Agada and flee to the mountains. The mountains? We can't survive there, Lot whispered back. Can we flee to Gomorrah or Zoar? Nick considered it carefully. You'll be safe in Zoar. Go now, quietly and quickly. He faded out of perceptibility and left to set off the earthquake. Lot woke up his wife and daughters. They gathered their belongings and fled the city. When Nick spied the family escaping, he exclaimed, Damn it, Lot, you were only supposed to take your daughters. Archangel Nick of Faith and Penance made the roiling waters throw up a large salt flow that landed on Ado, crushing her instantly. Nick sighed with relief. Whew, that was close. After encountering the Sodomites, Archangel Nick of Penance and Faith found himself needing some reassurance in his own faith. As soon as his feet touched the floor in the Room of Worlds, he teleported to Abel's front door. When Abel opened it, Nick grabbed him in a tight embrace. Nick, hey, you okay? Asked Abel. Yeah, sorry. Nick replied, pulling away embarrassedly. I just missed you. A smile filled Abel's face, and he yanked Nick into another hug. I missed you too. Come in, have a drink. I insist. Nick smiled gratefully, and the shadows crumbled away. I'd love to. You're one of my favorite humans, you know that? And you're one of my favorite seraphim. A year later, God summoned Nick to the Blue Void for his next penance assignment. That day, the Creator manifested as a handsome, middle-aged African man. It is time for another test of faith. Already? Nick asked with surprise. This one is part of your penance, God said. You must go to Abraham and demand he sacrifice that which he holds most precious. Abraham? I thought you liked that guy, Nick replied. Getting no response from God, he continued. Okay, so what do you want me to do if he refuses? You shall not let him refuse, they commanded. You will ensure he goes through with it. Nick took a deep breath and let it out slowly. The chill dread inside him didn't subside, but he had to ask, what's most precious to Abraham? God shrugged as if they didn't know. That is up to him. Nick found himself on Earth, invisible and inaudible to all except Abraham, who was currently snoring loudly. The Almighty had left Nick's face in light form and dressed him in glowing white vestments. As far as Abraham was concerned, it would suffice as proof of his heavenly origins, but Nick suspected God did it to tease him for his recent habit of shrouding himself in shadows while teleporting. Nick considered changing himself back to normal, but decided against it in case he was wrong about their motives. He couldn't shake off the deep sense of foreboding that hovered around this mission like a mist. Abraham, Nick said loudly. Abraham bolted upright in bed, saying, Yes, here I am. He looked wildly over at Nick, took in the face made of pure light, and concluded, The Lord blesses me with another messenger. Abraham, what do you hold most precious? Nick asked, careful to repeat God's exact words. Abraham thought carefully and decided, Isaac, my only son. He is the most precious of all God's gifts to me. Nick was grateful for the light obscuring his face. Technically, Abraham had fathered two boys, Ishmael and Isaac, but Abraham didn't consider Ishmael a real son because his mother, Hagar, was Abraham's wife's slave. More importantly, we didn't consider Ishmael his son because although Ishmael deserved a father, Abraham hadn't earned the title. He cast his first son aside when his legitimate one was born, so there might have been a little divine justice buried in this test. Nick decreed, Before midday tomorrow, you must sacrifice your only son's life. But why? Pleaded Abraham. I've always been your faithful servant. Prove it, Nick challenged. As you command, my lord, Abraham replied. He tried to clasp his hands together, but they were shaking too badly. Nick shifted out of Abraham's audiovisual spectrum, but stayed to watch him quietly agonizing through the night. The next day, Abraham led Isaac as far as they could walk before noon. Perhaps he didn't want to risk his wife Sarah overhearing Isaac scream. Perhaps he was stalling. Probably both. Nick followed them invisibly. He kept imagining Abel's face when he looked at Isaac, even though the boys didn't look much alike beyond a similar coloring. Close your eyes, Abraham instructed his son, who obeyed. Thank God for all the good things he has given you. Abraham silently prayed for the strength to continue. He unsheathed his dagger and raised it above Isaac, closed his eyes, and prepared to strike. Nick made himself audible and shouted, Stop! I hear you, Lord, said Abraham, gratefully dropping the knife from his trembling hands. What do you ask of me? Just stop. That's enough, Nick said. You're really... Good job. You proved your faith. Father, what's happening? Wondered Isaac. Can I open my eyes? Nick was whisked back to the blue void. God was manifested as a silverback gorilla. Their stony glare weighed heavily on him. Do you understand why I'm upset? Yes? Do you? They demanded, voice roiling like distant thunder. No, Nick admitted, Abraham's a good guy, and he definitely proved his faith. And Isaac's innocent. You can't have wanted... He trailed off under the Almighty's withering stare. "What did I tell you to do?" boomed God. Nick grimaced. "Tell Abraham to sacrifice his most precious thing, and make sure he went through with it," Nick said. "And what did you do?" God asked. Nick looked at his feet. "I stopped him." "You disobeyed me," God said. "I told you these assignments would be difficult. I told you they are your penance. You cannot atone for your sin in any other way, Nick." Nick looked up, wide-eyed, feeling like the endless blue void was suddenly cramped. "What? So that's it? I can never atone now?" "Of course you can still atone," the Creator assured him. "You were destined to fail the first test of this nature, so I added this one for training purposes." "So you didn't want Isaac to die?" Nick asked. God grunted frustratedly. "That is not the point, Nick. Your sin was catastrophic. You can only repair it by following my instructions, no matter how morally strenuous." "Your instructions aren't very clear," Nick complained. "You know better than that," God scolded gently. "I know what you will do with what I provide you. I know what must be done. You merely need faith in me." Nick blinked and was back in his office. Everything was just where it was when God summoned him for this latest assignment. Not a thing out of place, but somehow it seemed suddenly sinister. Trinkets from various worlds he'd worked on glared at Nick darkly from their shelves. His screens displaying various statistics seemed to whisper conspiratorially as he walked by, so he turned them off. While he was at it, Nick turned off the lights and shut the door. He poured himself a drink, plopped unceremoniously into his chair, and propped his feet up on his desk. Then Nick glared into the darkness, or near darkness. The hearth fire had been burning since the day he taught Eve about Flint. He just had to do what he was told unquestioningly? Easy. Even easier than his usual gig. But unquestioningly? Why did that suddenly seem difficult in a way it never had before? As Nick sat alone with his screaming thoughts, he came to a few realizations. This series of assignments was the first time God asked Nick to do something that didn't feel right. He'd always taken his faith for granted, but it had never actually been tested before. He couldn't convince himself that he regretted failing the test. After all, he'd been destined to fail. Nick may have had more revelations that night, but he remembers it more as a drunken fog than a set of coherent thoughts. Ultimately, he came to the conclusion that he should lean into the role he'd been given until told otherwise.